We are familiar with the Keeling curve, the famous hockey stick graph that shows the rise of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And that was this graph, this image that shook everybody and helped us realize how much carbon has been released just in the past 150 years. But if you step back and you dig into the social science, as Jeff was saying, that is so critical, we see that climate change was happening before that curve took that asymptotic turn. It's when dams were being created, waterways being plugged up. It's when the air was filling with gunpowder and smoke, that acrid smell. It's when trees were being felled so that they could be exported. These were the mechanisms of climate change induced by colonialism. Colonialism was the spread of a monoculture of a mind that permeates how we've constructed our world. And so the antidote to monoculture is, of course, diversity.
And the story today is that our ancestors' bones are flying to the sky. Not just our human ancestors, but our tree ancestors, our plant ancestors, our ancestors and relatives of all beings. And we have a role in that. We have a role as the mediators of the relationship between soil and sky. A lot of times when you see paintings or depictions of colonialism, of westward expansion, of manifest destiny, of what happened when in 1823, the courts of white man's law said you could plant a flag and claim land. Those depictions show the bison fleeing across the plains. They show First Nations people fleeing through forced migration and through genocide. And what they don't show is as above, so below. The creatures and communities of the soil were being displaced at the same time. The fungal communities, the bacterial communities were fleeing from colonialism. And so we today, we here have a role to call those communities back into this collective of what is land. Land is a collective of beings floating on this deep blessing of water. And our ancestors gave us stories to understand that. They gave us the medicine, they gave us the science, they gave us everything we need. We have all the tools that we need already. We have it all already. And so what we're trying to do now, what many communities across this now country, this Turtle Island are doing, like those fungal communities or soil communities, is bringing communities in, creating connection, healing rifts that were created by colonialism between Black communities, between Indigenous communities, between Black and Brown communities all over the country, and mediating that relationship between soil and sky, and listening to the land and recognizing the land as a being with agency, as a collective of beings with agency and rights. Just last year, the Ojibwe recognized the rights of rice, of wild rice, Manumin, which has a place in the creation story, has a place in spiritual identity, has a place in economic power, in cultural survival. And they recognize that rice has the right to its own restoration, its own renewal, its own survival, its own evolution, and to clean water, freshwater habitat, and also to a stable climate. So how can we listen? How can we listen? The land is already speaking with us. It's speaking in carbon, which is the stories and memories held in the soil. It's speaking in breaths, in invocations, in sighs, in great belches and gaseous emissions. It's speaking in life and death in regeneration, in decomposition. And all we have to do is listen the way our ancestors taught us to listen. Just listen to these languages that we know already and to recognize that we too are speaking with the land, and we can offer back to the land and be in conversation and hold on to these memories and stories in the form of carbon and in the form ourselves as a part of this great collective that is the land.
So as we listen to the land and to each other, we also just need to remember that we are the tools, we are the future, and we are enough. So I'd like you to remember that and to say that out loud. So repeat, please, after me. We are enough. And now when you say we, look around at who this we is. We. And now to your neighbors, remind them, we are. And so everybody can hear us. We are enough.
We are enough. Let me hear you now. Say it in with courage and conviction and love. We are enough. We are enough. Do you want to put a more in there? We are more than enough. We are just next level. We are more than enough. We are more than enough. We are more than enough. One more time. We are more than enough. Thank you.